Hey guys, it's Crystal. I hope you guys are all doing well today. I hope that you guys are outside enjoying the day if it's not raining where you are. And I hope that everything has gone well for you this week. If you guys are new to this channel, like I said, my name is Crystal and I do Canadian true crime or true crime with a Canadian twist. From time to time, I also cover international crimes, ones that have been recommended to me, ones that I'm interested in, sometimes ones that highlight the difference in the judicial systems. So if that sounds like something you guys want to be a part of, please like these videos, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave me some comments. You guys already know I'm going to say it, particularly about today's case. I try to find the most unusual cases that I can, so we have other things to talk about, and I really do want your input on this case. This is a crazy case. It's one that I've wanted to cover for quite some time. It'll be at least 2 parts, guys, and we're going to do it a little bit differently than we've done it in the past. If you guys do choose to leave comments, though, please no hate. These videos are for educational or entertainment purposes only. I make them just so that we can talk about theories, talk about interests, talk about things I may have missed that you guys want to know about. That's all. So please no hate, guys. There's enough hate out there in the world. We do not need to contribute to it. And if you guys are returning subscribers, you guys already know how much I love you and how thankful I am that you guys choose to watch these videos and be interested in them and leave me the comments that you guys have. Most of you guys are great. And some of the theories you guys have put forth, very interesting to me. I'm only one person. I have different theories than you guys. You guys have different theories than I do. It's nice to be able to share those things. Give me something else to think about. So, like I said, guys, today was kind of a disaster day. I really did try to do something with my hair, but unfortunately it was not cooperating. My makeup wasn't cooperating. It was just one of those days. But I did choose to pimp out the CBC. I haven't done it in a little while, guys. This is my Ooh David shirt. If you guys have never watched Schitt's Creek, watch it. It is a fabulous show. Fabulous. Today, we are going to be in Edmonton, guys, and we are going to cover a very prolific case. Probably not the case you guys are thinking of, though. You guys, if you've heard of this case, I'm not surprised. It's not really that old, and it hit international newsways for sure. It's very interesting. I think it's one of the more interesting crimes we're going to cover, and we're going to let it speak for itself. I won't even have that many questions for you guys because in this particular case, the killer did a lot of the work for us. But we're going to get to it. Now, most of the time, you guys know, actually all of the time, I tend to do crimes in a timeline from start to finish. This person is born, this person is born, and how they coincide. Today, we're not doing that. We're going to start not from the end of the case, maybe from the middle, okay? This is everything I got from this case, I actually got from this book. It's called The Devil's Cinema. If you guys have not read this book, I suggest that you pick it up. It's very interesting. If you guys have ever read Canadian true crime before, and you know, we've covered it with Jane Hirschman, with Bernardo and Homoka. I covered it when we did JR and Jeremy Allen Stanky. We did multiple books, right? Today, we didn't need multiple books. This book has everything in it, so I've taken almost exclusively from this book. This is why it's going to be a 2-parter. You guys know how it is with research. And also, I've added things from more reputable sources, you know what I mean? Like from the CBC, from Global News, from CTV, things of that nature. So if you have heard of this crime, I'm not surprised. If you haven't, I'm also not surprised. Some of my viewers maybe were young then. It's about a 12-year-old case, 13-year-old case now. And we are going to be talking about Mark Twitchell and Johnny Altinger. So like I said, we are going to start in the middle. This is going to, hopefully, let me know if you guys like this. We're trying something new. So first of all, we have to talk about Edmonton itself. We've not really discussed it before. Edmonton, you guys probably already know, it's the capital of Alberta. It's well known for its festival scene. Apparently they hold something called the Fringe Festival, and this is the largest fringe festival in North America. It's also well known for the West Edmonton Mall, right? That's the second largest mall in North America as well. But it is unofficially one of the largest festival holders of all times. They have in North America. They have festivals ongoing from spring until fall and into the winter too. Edmonton is well known for its winter activities, particularly skating, ice fishing, and hockey. It's the home of the Edmonton Oilers. And if you guys will remember, it was the one-time home of the great one, Wayne Gretzky. They won a number of Stanley Cups in the 80s mostly. Maybe not so much now, but in the 80s. So the Edmonton Oilers were definitely, they used to call it unofficially the City of Champions. It is actually known as the Oil City. Specifically because that's how a lot of Edmontonians make money. When there is an oil boom, they receive certain grants, things of that nature. So it's an off and on type process. Sometimes the oil flows nicely, sometimes it doesn't. I know a little bit about this because we actually have a small place here called Oil Springs, and we have a tiny little oil city. I took my kids to the museum. We learned a lot. So it has a large population. They have about 1,419,000 people. That was as of this year, actually, guys. It fluctuates a little bit, but usually they verge on the million mark. And it is actually the second largest city in Alberta, Calgary being the first. Now, Edmonton is also home to a lot of celebrities. You guys may not have known this. Michael J. Fox comes from Edmonton. So does Ruth B. the singer, and Tommy Chong, Edmontonian for real. But you guys might not know that Edmonton, how do I say this nicely, has a fairly high crime rate. Actually, in Edmonton itself, it's known as Deadmonton or Stabmonton because of all the murders they actually have. It's fairly high on the crime index. They average in the last couple of years about 32, 36 murders a year. That's a lot. I know there's a lot of people in it, but that is a lot of murders. And at one point in time, it ranked higher than the national average. It was, for a few years, one of the most dangerous place to live in Canada. Of course, you guys know now that's Thompson, Manitoba. And at this point in time, Edmonton ranks about 25th on Canada's most dangerous places to live. It's still a very nice place, guys. Like, there's a lot of rural and agricultural areas out there as well. But specifically on the south side, I guess they said, it's fairly crime-ridden. So we're going to start off with a quote. Here we go. So, quote, "Anyone can turn out to be a psychopath without being overtly obvious about it," end quote. And that is directly from Mark Twitchell himself. We're going to get into it. So, Bill Clark is a detective, and you guys know that I'm generally not that great to the police forces. I'm really not, but I actually love Bill Clark. If you guys are interested, and I've talked about it before, there is a TV show called The Detectives on the CBC. Get CBC Gem, guys, it's free. And actually, there is an episode devoted to the case we're going to be talking about, and Bill Clark features prominently in it. If you guys see him, you'll understand why I like him. So Bill Clark is a veteran homicide detective, or was at that time. I think he may be retired as of now, but at that point in time, he was a veteran homicide detective. And he was just chilling at his house one night when he got a phone call to come in. They said it was about a missing persons case, which struck him as odd, because he's homicide, not missing persons. But the detective on the other end told him that foul play was likely suspected. So he went down. And he talked to individuals about it, mostly Dale Smith. Dale Smith was Johnny Altinger's best friend. And he was very concerned. So were a number of other friends. Johnny had gone out on a date on the 10th of October. It is now about the 19th, 17th to the 19th of October. So this struck everybody as odd, because though they'd heard from him, the messages that they heard, the emails, were very impersonal, not in a way that Johnny would necessarily write, and didn't make a lot of sense. So, of course, the detectives wanted to hear about these messages. In the messages, Johnny had said that he and this person who he had went out on a date for, a woman named Jen, were going to go away for 2 months after just meeting this first night. We're going to go away for 2 months to Costa Rica. He wouldn't be back until December 10th. There wasn't any phone reception. He could only email once in a while. And anytime they would ask a question about the vacation or tell Johnny to call them, he would never respond. Like I said, the emails were very cold and impersonal and did not make sense to people who knew him really well. There were actually 3 reasons why they didn't make sense. Number 1, Johnny was not a lover of the heat. He didn't like the heat, period. So it's very strange that he would choose to go to Costa Rica. Number 2, Johnny was well known for being methodical and rational when planning out a vacation. He would plan vacations for months. He was not a spur of the moment guy. He was not spontaneous like that, and it struck his friends at odd that he would suddenly become that way just because of this woman. And number 3, he hadn't done any of the things he would have done in the past when he was going on vacation, particularly making sure that somebody would look after his babies. Now, his babies are not children, and they're actually not fur babies either. Johnny's babies were his motorcycles. His friends had already gone past his condo twice, and they noticed that, yes, his cherry red 2005 Mazda 3 hatchback was missing, but his motorcycles were not covered up. That is something Johnny would never do. And he would arrange to have somebody make sure that they were covered up. And if he was leaving for like 2 months, that somebody would go out and take them on a run so that they wouldn't break down. He hadn't done that. It just did not make sense. He had also emailed his boss his resignation. And this struck his boss as odd, so he too had called the detectives and asked them to look into Johnny as a missing person. Number 1, because he said, okay, Johnny, I guess if you're going to resign, where do I send the last check to? And Johnny never got back to him. And number 2, because this was very strange, Johnny actually really liked his work, and he had never had an indication of leaving before. So who was? Well, I can't say so who was. I should say so who was the missing person in this case. His name was Johnny Brian Altinger, like I've already said, and yes, that is his real name. His name was not John, it was Johnny. We'll get into why. His name is Johnny Brian Altinger. He was a 38-year-old single man who worked at a place called Argus Machine, and he was part of quality control there. From what I know, he measured out the pipes. They had to be measured out distinctly and exactly before they could be cut, and that was his job. It was a fairly good job. It made him a lot of money. And he lived on his own at the condo. Police initially just figured that maybe Johnny wasn't with this Jen guy or with this Jen girl. Maybe he was just gone with somebody else, or maybe he truly was gone. But the stories did sound a little fishy, so they decided they were going to look into it. Like I said, he had gone out on a date on October 10th of 2008. This is 2008, guys. And nobody had seen him since. They had heard periodically from him, but nobody had seen him since then. He had met this woman, Jen, on plentyoffish.com, actually that day. So this also struck them as weird that he would decide to take off with this woman to Costa Rica at that point in time. He claimed in the email that Jen was super rich, that she was covering everything, and that when he eventually got back, they were going to live together, things of that nature. He was just being spontaneous, and he was going out, and she was going to foot the bill for everything. So his friends did give all of the emails to police, and Johnny did tell them that the date he was supposed to come back was December 10th, exactly 2 months later. So the email was sent on the 13th of October. It was not sent on the 11th or the 12th, but on the 13th of October. Just his friends were very suspicious about it. Nothing in Johnny's background made them believe that this was true. Now, some of his online friends, because Johnny had quite a few friends. He had in-person friends, he had online friends, and he had a vast network of them. So some of them were like, good on you, man. And they asked to see pictures, and of course, he'd never respond to them. So they I don't know if some of his online friends were necessarily concerned at that point, but they also noted that it did seem a little bit strange. He was far too reliable, far too hardworking, and far too meticulous in planning to do something like this. He wasn't a spontaneous guy. His best friend, like I said before, was Dale Smith, and they'd actually known each other in childhood. So they've been friends for quite some time. And it was Dale that was spearheading everything. In fact, during that week, he had called several times to get an officer to come and look at Johnny's condo, to come and look into things. And he'd been brushed off a couple times by police because at this point in time, there isn't a case, guys. It could have been very likely that Johnny really did do something spontaneous, but it just didn't make a lot of sense. So Dale, like I said, had hounded the police all week, and finally on October 17th, police decided to get involved. He had done the right thing, though. Johnny had done the right thing. And before he left, this is also an interesting part. This is also why his friends were wondering about things. He had emailed his friends, two of his friends actually, Dale and another good friend from work, the directions that this woman, Jen, had given him to her house. But these weren't directions to a house, guys. They were directions to a double door garage. It was a detached garage. It was not, I think it was a distance away from the house, not too far, but not close at the exact same time. And there was no address for him to go to. She gave him weird directions about going down a back alley and parking at a specific spot and then going into the garage. He had the foresight to email these to his friends because he also thought they were strange. But regardless, the friends also were concerned about the directions. So Johnny himself has been described as a super nice person. He has a very great personality. He's not necessarily a looker. I thought he was cute, but his own family said that about him. He wasn't conventionally handsome. There we go. But he made up for it with his personality. Now, when the police were questioning his friends about him, they asked, and they said, yes, he was a little odd. He's not necessarily a ladies' man. He had come into some money due to the oil boom. I'm not really quite sure about the politics of that, but he had come into some money. And he was also described as a bit of a nerd and a bit of a loner. He could be reserved at times. He had been using online dating for quite a while. Johnny was very into computers. He was very good at them. And he had been online dating for quite a while. His mom actually lived on the West Coast with her partner named Dennis, and she was in Mexico at this point in time on vacation. She too had called her son and only got his voicemail, but she figured, oh, he must be busy at this point in time. And the police didn't necessarily want to bother Alfredi, that's his mother's name, at this point in time. Police, like I said, figured he was with somebody, not necessarily Jen, but somebody. And Homicide figured within a couple hours, the case would be dismissed. They'd find Johnny and no bad thing would come of it. Little did they know this would end up being definitely Bill Clark's biggest case of his life. So they searched airline records for Johnny to see if he had gone to Costa Rica. And they also searched the parking garages to see if they could find his Mazda or see if he had booked anything. But they, of course, came up with nothing. They got forensics at that point in time to go over to Johnny's condo and just do a little bit of a sweep at that point. Like I said, he'd emailed the directions. And they decided that they would also look into this garage because that's the last point that Johnny was known to be going to. Like I said, it was down an alley and it was detached from the house. So the house would be here, the garage would be here. There'd be a little bit of a distance to walk from each other. Now, the house and the garage were rented, but they were rented by two separate people. The house itself was rented by a family. They didn't speak a lot of English. They were actually from Mexico, and they kept to themselves quite a bit. They found out that the garage was rented by a man named Mark Andrew Twitchell. So they knew they'd have to get a hold of him just so that they could look around the garage. Like I said, it was the last known place that Johnny was going to. They called him up, and he had actually given, there were originally the missing people, the missing persons detachment was actually looking for Johnny as well. So they were into the case a couple days earlier before the homicide detectives were, and Mark had already given them access to the garage. They'd gone in and done a small sweep, and it was fairly clean in there, so they didn't think anything of it. Johnny was obviously not being held in the garage. He was obviously not inside of the garage. So he said he had keys to the garage, which was locked with a padlock. It wasn't locked with a regular lock. He had keys to the garage, as did two other people that he worked with. They were part of a film crew for him. He was a director that was making films at this point in time. So obviously they'd have to interview all three of these men. They were the ones that were involved with the garage. And the directions Johnny had was directly to their garage. So Mark was interviewed, and it was recorded at that point in time. This would be on the 17th. And Clark watched, actually this was a little bit earlier, and Clark watched that video, the initial interview that Missing Persons had done with Mark. He was relaxed in it. Mark appeared to be in his late 20s. He's about 10 years younger. It's actually about 9 years younger than Johnny himself. He seemed energetic. He was clean shaven. He was baby-faced. He had short black hair, and he was really chatty, particularly about his film career and what he was doing. Very forthcoming with information. He didn't clam up at all. He seemed like a good, decent guy. He seemed, quote, as stumped as police, end quote, about what was going on. And he said he didn't know a Jen, and he didn't know Johnny Altinger. When they asked him about his movie, he described it as a psychological thriller. The name of this movie, it was a short movie, it was about 8 minutes long, was called House of Cards. And in it, they had used fake blood, they had used samurai swords, all of this type of thing, because it was a psychological thriller. There were horror scenes within it. And he told them that the film was done and was going into post-production. They'd actually just filmed it at the end of September. So Clark himself, when he talked to him, this is where it gets confusing, guys, because I know Missing Persons interviewed him. I think Bill Clark was interviewing him now. So he went in to talk to Mark, and he said that Mark was, quote, very open and forthcoming in the interview, end quote, and, quote, does not come across as deceptive, end quote. He figured... Bill figured that Mark would just let them back into the garage again, that they wouldn't need a warrant or have to worry about it because he'd let them in it before. So forensics went to the condo on October 19th to look around more deeply, just to see. And this garage, they went into the condo. They went into Johnny's condo on October 19th to look around there and see if anything had happened to him there. His condo was at 1145 Ellerslie Road, Suite 103. So it was a normal looking condo. It was basically a bachelor pad, guys. It was a little, messy. There was a suit jacket crumpled in the bedroom. It looked like he had tried it on before the date, decided against it, and went away with it, and decided not to use it. They noted that there were dirty dishes. It wasn't particularly tidy, but it didn't seem like someone left on vacation. It didn't look like there were suitcases missing. It didn't look like there were any clothes missing, nothing of that nature. And when they checked through the drawers of his desk, they found his passport. How could Johnny be in Costa Rica without a passport? Now they're definitely starting to worry, because of course nothing makes sense. He can't be on vacation in Costa Rica if he doesn't have his passport. So they decided that they were going to send a few materials off, like his toothbrush, deodorant, things of that nature, so they could get a DNA profile on Johnny, just in case something came up. They were going to do that. So they sent off a couple items, a few items to be tested, just so they could get a profile of Johnny's DNA. There was, however, no signs of a crime. There was no blood. There were no missing knives. There was nothing of that nature. Nothing to suggest that a crime had taken place. None of the doors were tampered with. Nothing like that. They had come in a couple days prior to that, when they had originally started working the case, and removed his computer. The only reason they did this was so that they could get his contact information, his friend's contact information. They had called each and every one of them, and no one had seen Johnny in that past week. So the computer had already been removed. However, when they looked, they noticed the printer had disappeared as well. There was a space. Definitely, you could tell the outline of a printer had been there, and the printer was oddly enough missing as well. So they tried to get a search warrant, and it was denied, of course, anyway, so they could search the garage. There's no probable cause at this point in time. They did want to get the search warrant for the garage, but without probable cause, guys, at this point in time, no crime has been committed. So they once again just asked Mark, and he said, yeah, of course you can go in and look around at it. Mark himself lived in St. Albert's, which is a bedroom community on the outskirts of Edmonton. It's not in downtown Edmonton. It's part of the city, but it's on the outskirts. So it's a bed, like they described it as a bedroom community. So Mark told the officers that strange things had been happening to him in the last little while. He said he wanted the police to know about these strange incidences because he felt like somebody might be setting him up. He was concerned. He said that on October 8th, his car had been broken into, but nothing really of value had been taken, just a few small items. And oddly enough, rent receipts for the garage had also been taken. He said that on October 12th, the front door of his house had been unlocked. He said his wife was anal retentive about it. He and his wife and their daughter had both been gone for a little while, and they were both sure that the door had been locked, but suddenly it was unlocked when they got home. Nothing had been taken. It was just unlocked. He then said on October 15th, while he was at a gas station, a man hurried over and knocked on his car window. He rolled it down, and the two of them had a conversation about a car. This man had a 2005 cherry red Mazda 3 hatchback that he desperately wanted to get rid of. He said he was going on vacation, would be gone for 3 months. The woman he was going with was a wealthy woman and would buy him a car when they got back to Canada. He said he asked Mark if Mark wanted to buy the car. And Mark said, oh yeah, sure, but I don't have, any money on me, or enough money on me. The man said, well, how much money do you have? Mark said $40. The guy said, okay, it's a done deal for $40. This 3-year-old car that was in mint condition, guys, for $40. The man then drove the car to the rental garage that Mark was using to film the videos, and they completed the deal. When Mark asked for this man's name, this man claimed his name was also Mark. Now, Mark described the man as agitated and jumpy. He said the man was a white male, about 6'2", in his late 20s, possibly early 30s. He also, interestingly enough, had black hair, and he had a Celtic knot tattooed on his neck, on the side of his neck. And like I said, the car in question sounds eerily like Johnny Altinger's car, doesn't it? Since Mark couldn't drive a stick shift, he didn't know how, and the car was a stick shift, he asked his friend Joss to store the car at Joss's parents' house. Now, I don't know if Joss was living there or if he just went there from time to time and spent time there. I was never completely sure on this. But anyway, Joss agreed to house it at his parents' house. So after hearing about Mark's strange car story and knowing what car was involved, right, the make of the car involved, Bill Clark started to believe that Mark was somehow involved in whatever had happened to Johnny Altinger. He wanted to talk to Mark again, specifically because this car would not be worth only $40. This car would be worth thousands of dollars, and the story just did not make sense. It was a very bizarre story. Maybe if Mark hadn't said anything, nobody would have ever known anything. However, there was a reason Mark had to say something, but we won't get into that until the next video. Sorry, guys. So Mark gave a statement about the car sale. And he then gave them names of more people that were working on the cast and in crew members from the video that he had made, right? Sorry, guys. It's a soda day. This case is, it's something. Just give me 1 second, guys. He also said that the padlock that he used to lock the garage was different. He said that his padlock was black and silver. This one was a different padlock. So when they went to go look into the garage, he was like, oh, well, I don't have a key to this padlock. Somebody must have changed this padlock. And of course, it was like a really crappily done padlock. So the police just had to unscrew the hasp. You know what I mean? And they were able to get in. He also told them that the supplies that they would find in the garage looked like they had been used, the cleaning supplies. He also said that there was an oil drum in there and it looked like somebody had tried to burn something in it. He ostensibly said that he did not do any of these things. Whoever had changed the padlock had. So at this point in time, Bill Clark found that this story just reeked, guys. It did not make any sense. His spider sense was tingling, and Bill Clark was known as a detective who chased leads. He wasn't that great at interviews. He could be a bit aggressive at times, I guess people said. He was probably better known for playing the bad cop, but he was very well known for chasing leads. And this story just did not make sense to him. He felt that Mark Twitchell was using one of the oldest tricks in the book, and that would be offering, quote, an alternative suspect, end quote. Well, it couldn't be me because somebody else broke into my garage. Everything's been changed around. It must be some weirdo that none of us had ever met. Oh my God. Or maybe it's somebody else in my crew. They could have changed the padlock, things of that nature, right? So they asked Mark, and trust me, Mark likes to talk about himself. They asked Mark what the movie was about, and he told them it was about a serial killer who targets cheating men on websites. He poses as a fake female and lures in these cheating men as his form of justice. I know this will probably sound familiar to some of you guys. Not the bad profiles, not the catfishing. Maybe it sounds like a TV show. Where he then tortured them for information like their banking information and their social media passwords and stabbed them to death. He said that the oil drum, the reason that it was in the garage was because it was a prop for the film. And it was supposed to be there to imply that the killer disposed of his victims that way. Now, Mark Twitchell at this point in time, though seems highly suspicious, didn't really seem like a killer. You know what I mean? He didn't really look like a killer. And there was nothing in his life that would suggest that at this point in time. This is just surface stuff. He was married. He was the father of an 8-month-old baby girl. Her name was Chloe. His wife's name was Jess. He loved Star Wars. he actually loved it so much, he directed a fan film based on that. And that's really the start of his filmmaking career. And it was where he had met the crew that he was using for his other films. He told them that his income mainly came from money being raised by investors and for his movies. He said that the name of his production company was called Express Entertainment. They would later find a business card in his car that said that too. He also said that he supplemented his income by, quote, selling handmade Star Wars props on eBay, end quote. His wife was on mat leave at this point in time, so her salary had been vastly reduced, right? Because that's how it works. So he admitted that he had 2 cell phones, and he claimed he was looking for investors. He's probably trying to pitch to them for an upcoming feature-length movie that he wanted to make called Day Players. This was a comedy, and it was based loosely on a British TV show called Extras that starred Ricky Gervais. He was on that show, I guess. He told them he didn't have a bill of sale for the car, but he did have everything else, like the title and all that stuff. And he talked on and on and on about himself and the projects he was working on. He was very invested in himself, and he was very proud of the projects he was working on. However, they noticed during the interview that his story about the car and things about the garage and things about things that had happened to him were changing. His story changed multiple times, guys, about the car, and he started adding more detail to it. Police are trained to know these in investigation tactics, but I mean, to be honest with you, if somebody's telling you a big story and they keep adding more and more detail, we're not going to really, if the story's true, we're not going to remember details like that. Unless, like, I mean, it was part of a traumatic event. It wasn't making sense. He said that on October 10th, he had gone to the garage to clean it up. Now, this was interesting because his cast and crew had remarked that they had been done shooting the film by the end of September, and that they had cleaned up the garage then. If the garage was clean, why would Mark have to go back and clean it up on the 10th? It didn't make a lot of sense that way. And this was also, the 10th was also the day Johnny went missing. If he had directions to the garage and was going to be at the garage, what was Mark doing also at the garage? Now, he didn't say what time he went to the garage, but I'm just saying. So neighbors actually remembered seeing Mark change that padlock on the weekend, that earlier weekend. This was actually Thanksgiving weekend in Canada, guys. Our Thanksgiving is the second Monday of October. So the 11th, 12th, 13th would be Thanksgiving weekend. They said they saw him on the 11th or 12th changing that padlock himself. So obviously his story's falling apart. Nobody came there and changed the padlock. He did it himself. Another couple in the rented garage neighborhood also remembered seeing the red Mazda parked at the garage on October 14th. Interesting, because Mark claimed it was the 15th he bought it. So at this point, police knew for sure Mark was lying. There's no way around it. And they decided to confront him, particularly about all the changes that were being made in his stories. The friend, they also interviewed Joss, and at that point in time, Joss said that he was storing the car for Mark. He'd cleaned it up a little bit, but not too much. Maybe he dusted it off. I don't know. Maybe he cleaned part of the inside. I really don't know what that meant. And there were reasons, but we probably not going to get into them until the second video. Sorry, guys. He said he cleaned it up a little, and that he had also removed the license plates from the car themselves. Now, Mark claimed to have the key to the Mazda and the license plates in his car, which was a maroon Grand Am, Pontiac Grand Am. So Clark confronted Mark as the 19th turned into the 20th. It was later on at night on the 19th when they started interviewing him. this interview, and it's starting to turn into the early morning hours of the 20th. And he was like, I know you have something to do with this, Mark. I know you have something to do with it. Where is Johnny? Where is Johnny? Mark was shocked. He acted shocked about this. How dare you suspect this? I don't even know this guy. How could I do something to him? I'm a filmmaker. That's all I am. I'm just a director. So Clark decided to switch tactics. You know, he's good at playing good cop, bad cop. He's probably better at playing bad cop. But instead of just accusing him, he started to try to appeal to his senses, you know, butter him up. Say things like, you're a decent guy. You have a conscience. Where's Johnny? Just tell us what happened to him. You know, you seem like a good guy. Let us know what happened. He also told Mark that now would be the time to drop the director-actor image, because this wasn't a film. This wasn't a movie. This was real life, and they needed real life answers. So Mark didn't confess. He didn't crack. At one point, when they were questioning him with this new with what they knew and saying that he was lying, Mark told Bill Clark, quote, "You'd be surprised what I can live with," end quote. It looked at points in time that he was going to waver, that he was going to admit to something, whatever that might be. It looked like he was going to, because he said things like, you know, I'm married. I have to protect my wife type thing. But then he went on to later say his marriage was basically over and he didn't have to protect her anymore. He admitted that he was scared and apprehensive about the whole thing. And just when it looked like he was going to crack, he lawyered up. So they got nowhere. While they were leaving the building, and at this point in time, Mark started to hate Bill Clark. They ended up having to take the elevator down together. And Bill was like, I know you did something. He said, oh, yeah, Mark, you said the keys to Johnny's car were, or the keys to the cherry red Mazda 3 were in your car, eh? And he did say, eh? I'm going to seize your car. I have probable cause. I can get a search warrant because you said that items belonging to this man, probable items belonging to this man, were in your car. So now I'm going to seize your Grand Am. Of course, Mark is so mad. And he tried to tell them, oh, I just have to get a few things out of the car. And Bill was like, no, you're not touching the car. You're not getting anything. Find a way home. So they did seize his Grand Am at that point in time. And they also seized his home so that they could search for evidence. They went there, and of course, Jess and the baby are there, right? And Jess was completely taken aback. She had no idea what was going on. I'm not sure, I can't remember if Mark called her or not and told her that the police would be coming by. She didn't want to let them in. She was like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't want to let you guys in. She was very suspicious, but eventually she did let them in. I mean, they had a search warrant anyway, and she left the house. This would be the last time Jess was ever inside the home that they shared together in St. Albert. So police also questioned the film crew, right? Because some of them did have keys to the place, and they had been a group of the last people that had been in there. They obviously knew nothing. They didn't know anything that was going on. They never heard of Johnny. Most of them didn't know, other than Joss, didn't know about the car. They didn't know anything about anything. And they said none of them had been at the garage since the end of September. One man said that he did stop by after filming, and the garage had appeared to be clean. He must have forgotten something. He stopped by to get it. This was probably earlier, the end of September, maybe the start of October. He just stopped by and the garage was relatively clean. There was no reason for Mark to go back at all. There was no reason. So they once again described more of the film. Like I said before, this film is called House of Cards. It's about 8 minutes long, and they described it as a Dexter spoof. That's why I wanted to know if this sounded familiar to anybody. If you guys don't know what Dexter is, it's a Showtime show, although I feel like you can catch it on Prime now or something of that nature. It's okay. Just 1 second, guys. Mommy will fix it later. It's okay. No, it's okay. Mommy will fix it. Okay? Don't worry. Sorry, guys. Kid problems, right? So, sorry. If you guys don't know what Dexter is, like I said, it's a Showtime show. I think you can find it on Prime now. It ran for several seasons. And as far as I know, they're thinking about rebooting it. So there's that out there. It's a series about a man named Dexter Morgan. He works as a blood splatter expert that helps Homicide in the Miami PD. He works for Miami PD as their blood splatter expert, and he helps out with homicides. But in reality, he's actually a psychopath who deals with his urges to kill by killing criminals he believes that the justice system hasn't dealt with properly. So he only kills bad guys at this point in time. It's based on the books written by Jeff Lindsay that are also called Dexter. He has a plastic wrapped kill room that he takes his victims to, and the victims are usually dismembered there, and then he places their remains in trash bags and dumps them out at sea or the ocean. Is it the sea or the ocean? I think it's the ocean. Sorry, guys. He also keeps a slide with one spot of their blood on it as his trophy instead of, having other things around that would link him to the crimes. That's all he keeps. Mark loves Dexter, guys. This is something I didn't add in when we were talking about it before. It is his new obsession. He loves Dexter, so he created House of Cards to be a play on that. And like I said before, the guy that's doing this in the film lures in cheating men by pretending to be a female, and he used plentyoffish.com to do so. This is also actually where he met his wife, Jess, was on plentyoffish.com. So House of Cards was made while Mark was waiting for investors to sign up for Day Players, right? Day Players was going to be his big break. It was going to be what got him into Hollywood. But he decided to make a film while waiting for people to invest, I guess, guys. And he would, I guess the killer would knock these unsuspecting victims out with a stun gun first. And then the person would wake up and they'd be duct taped to a chair. They would be tortured for their personal information. Like I said before, their PIN number and the passwords to their social media, before they were eventually killed and disposed of. The killer would then send emails to his victims' friends and family from the victim's own account. That's why he needed the social media passwords, right? Telling them that he would be away for a period of time on vacation. Okay, sounding familiar at all, guys? That's the premise of the movie. He would then delete the social media. He would then delete the profile that he had made and all conversations between the two of them from the victim's social media as well as his own. It was just supposed to, now at the end of the movie, I guess they focus in and it shows that the plot is actually being written by a guy. He's just sitting in a chair and writing it. So it looks like a movie within a movie, right? He's writing about his own movie. But then when you zero in on things, you'll notice that on his computer, he's created a fake female persona. You'll also notice a bag that has a black hockey mask in it. So it implies that the writer is going to do what he's written about in real life. So on October 21st, they searched Mark's Grand Am, and it was a piece of crap, guys. This car was not well maintained, and there was junk everywhere in it. It's almost like he'd been living in his car, even though I know he has a house and everything, but he used his car a lot, let's just say. There was crap everywhere in it, so there was a lot to go through. They did find business cards, like I said, for Express Entertainment in it. They also found the key to the Mazda. I think it was in a cup holder. They also, oddly enough, found lots of post-it note reminders. It was almost like Mark was so busy thinking about things that he had to write a to-do list for himself every day. And he would just put it on post-its, and they were all over the car. It looked like they had been stuck to the dashboard but had fallen. These post-its included a map to Johnny's condo from Mark's address in St. Albert. Yeah, a map to Johnny's condo from Mark's address in St. Albert. There was also a note to self, or there was also a note to remind himself to, quote, ship phone while it's on. Returned the return address using the return address of the victim. Destroy wallet contents. Use laptop general Wi-Fi for email, end quote. Quote, kill room clean sweep, end quote. Quote, F Tracy senseless. Sorry, I was trying to think of a better way to say it, end quote. So now you're wondering to yourself, well, who's Tracy? His wife is Jess. So clearly it appears that Mark has also been messing around in his marriage. They also found a receipt for a hockey mask. I mean, it's Edmonton, so it may not seem like a big deal. They did know he had filmed this movie, but regardless, they found the receipt for the hockey mask. They found a K-bar military blade. It was about 7 inches long, guys, and it was inside a backpack, and it had a rubber handle, and both the blade and the handle appeared to be stained with blood. There was a reddish substance on it. Of course, they had to send it away to be tested. They also found a large red stain in the car's trunk, a dirty steak knife in the spare tire wheel, like sorry guys, the crevice where the spare tire would be stored. Sorry guys, I'm not good at that, the car stuff, you know that. And they found a duffel bag that also had red stains on it, as well as a Toshiba laptop with what appeared to be blood stains on the keys as well. Of course, when they were sent for testing, they did come back as blood. Initial tests showed that these were definitely blood-stained items. So, of course, they had to track down who this Tracy is. They found out her name was Tracy Higgins, and that she denied actually having an affair with Mark. She said that they had dated before, yes, while they were in university, that's where they met, and that as of now they were just platonic friends. They said that she did tell them, though, that they had gone to an afternoon matinee movie on October the 10th. She had to get home to her dogs. These were her fur babies. She loves her dogs. She treated them like her children, kind of like how Johnny was with his motorcycles. So they cut the date short, right? That's why they had to go out in the afternoon. And of course, Mark had things to do, but she denied having an affair with him. At this point in time, Mark had kind of disappeared a little bit. They went to his parents' house to see if he was there. That's ostensibly the place where he's going to go. His house has been seized. And his father looked like he would be more forthcoming with information. In fact, later on, he said to the detectives that they should have a vasectomy at one point. But regardless, his mother wouldn't answer any questions and wouldn't let them know where he was. So on Wednesday, October 22nd, they did a full search of the St. Albert residence that Mark lived in. And of course, they documented the garage, the search of the car, and the house search with video, right? That's what you do. You do a walkthrough and videotape it first just to see what's on the surface, and then you videotape other stuff that's important later on as well, and take pictures of it. You guys know that. The house, they noted, was not tidy, particularly because Jess was dealing with a baby, right? You guys know how busy it is, and she had to leave in a hurry, right? She didn't have a chance to do anything, so the house was not particularly tidy. They went downstairs to the basement, and this is where it appeared that Mark was living. It didn't seem like he was sharing the upstairs with Jess and the baby, because they found a mattress on the floor there. So it looked like at certain points of time, at least, Mark was so caught up in whatever he was doing, he'd sleep downstairs. And also, they already know about Tracy, so they're figuring that the marriage is in trouble at this point in time. There was a mattress on the floor, like I said. There was like gross half-filled food bowls all over the place, like Mr. Noodles and stuff. There were empty energy drink cans all over. They did, however, in the heater room, find a medieval sword and a samurai sword, and then upstairs they located 2 samurai swords as well. Of course, ostensibly, Mark had already told them that he'd use it as a samurai sword in House of Cards. They took his computer and his hard drive, naturally. They did find a street hockey mask. Now, this street hockey mask was fairly distinctive, guys. It had been painted black, and it had 3 stripes running across the face. So I guess ostensibly to represent like an animal claw mark. So it looked like somebody had clawed it. And those were painted in gold. The bottom part of the mask had been removed, so it wasn't a full face. It was like the jaw area had been removed from the mask. They did note that there were possible blood stains on it. They found an air gun there. It's like a handheld pistol. It shoots BBs. It's an air gun. They found that. They found lots of science fiction books and movies. They found psychological thrillers. They found some true crime stuff. They found books on human behavior and forensics, which of course Mark had told them about, that he was studying for House of Cards, right? He studied it psychologically. They found all the Dexter books and the burned DVDs that he had of the seasons of Dexter. They found a number of violent DVDs and violent video games. I mean, that doesn't really mean much to me, because there's tons of people that play violent games and they're not serial killers. If you guys were to look at my books, you guys have seen some of my books, but if you guys were to look at my library, it's mostly true crime. Things on forensics. I do have stuff like that. I studied criminology, guys, so of course. There's a lot of psychological thrillers, things of that nature. That's what I enjoy. If you look at my movies, you're going to notice the horror movies. You're going to notice the psychological thrillers. You're going to notice the stories based on true crimes, right? Like, I have some Ted Bundy movies. I have the movie on Lakening. You're going to notice that stuff. Does it mean I'm a killer? No, that's just what I enjoy. And in fact, a lot of the times when they interview suspects, or when they go and do a search of the suspect home, they'll make sure that that part is leaked to the media. Well, this particular person had an interest in true crime. They must be guilty. It doesn't mean because you have an interest in true crime that you're guilty. They're just saying that it seemed suspicious. This was generally what he read. They also found a travel guide to Costa Rica, as well as numerous blank postcards from Costa Rica. Interesting, right? Apparently, Jess and Mark had actually gone to Costa Rica on their honeymoon. I hope I'm saying it right. I call it Costa Rica. Some people say Costa Rica. Costa Rica. They also found a pair of men's jeans with probable blood stains on them. And in the bowl of the washer, there were faint pinkish stains. So it looked like somebody had tried to run something blood-stained through the washing machine and then just hadn't cleaned out the bowl. Of course, all of these items would have to be tested though, right? On the computer though, they found the treasure trove, guys. It was buried deep within the hard drive. But they were, and it was, the file was under Express Entertainment. But they found the mother lode. They found a basic diary. We're going to call it that, a diary, of how the person who was writing the diary became a serial killer. This diary was called SK Confessions, and the opening part is, quote, "This story is based on true events. The names and events were altered slightly to protect the guilty. This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer, end quote. This document was about 35 pages long. I think it was like type single space too, so that's a lot of stuff to go through. It talked about how the person that wrote it, the killer, we'll just say the killer, okay? It talked about how the killer had targeted men on dating websites using a fake female persona. Talked about how when they made the decision to become a serial killer, they suddenly felt freer, like there was a burden lifted off of them. They felt better for the first time in a long time. That they felt awesome, basically. It talked about how originally the killer wanted to target cheating men, so like in House of Cards. But then he decided that was too risky because that person would have a wife, and of course the wife would notice if their husband was missing. So instead, the killer was going to target single middle-aged men who lived alone because it would take longer for people to notice them missing. It talked about having a kill room, and this kill room was described as a detached garage. I just said it. Oh my God, garage. Sorry, guys. With the address removed and strange directions leading up to it that he would give to the probable victims. So that no one, the address, place, and the strange directions were ostensibly so that nobody would know how to locate it. I mean, I guess that blew that for him because they knew pretty fast. But anyway, it also described a black hockey mask with gold claw marks going down it and the jaw removed, which is what the killer wore when he confronted his victims. It talked about using a knife, a K-bar knife, a military grade knife, to kill the victim, or to ostensibly do things. It talked about how the original victim was shocked with a stun gun and then put in a sleeper hold so that they became unconscious. And then the killer wanted to tape them up and put them on this table. Now, this table, you're going to hear it described later on too, he claimed it was a movie prop, but it basically looked like a coroner's table, guys. You guys know from like CSI or watching Criminal Minds or anything like that. We'll use CSI as our example. You know, when Doc Robbins is talking to everybody, the medical examiner, he pulls them out and they're on this table that is made ostensibly from stainless steel. It's a wide table and long enough for a person to be on. That's what the table was like. The document described an earlier attack on October 3rd, where the victim fought back and was able to escape. So police are suspicious now, wondering if maybe there's another victim out there that hasn't come forward. In the SK confessions, there were people named Lacey, Tess, who was the killer's wife, and the killer's child was a baby named Zoe. Sorry, guys. The document also described a date with Lacey on October 10th to watch a movie before going to dispatch of his victim. He described everything about Tracy in it, including her dogs, her fur babies, as well as saying that he loved her and always would. He didn't love his wife. This document seemed to be a blow-by-blow confession of what had actually happened. A blow-by-blow account of Mark killing Johnny Altinger. They knew about the table, right? He described that. He described this earlier attack. He described all of the props that he had used, all of the, I want to call them props, guys, all the things that he had used to kill them, things that they knew that they'd already found, right? The blood-stained K-bar knife, the hockey mask that was very specific and had splatters of blood on it. He described the date with Lacey and described Lacey, and of course the police knew Lacey was Tracy. He described Jess as Tess, right? The wife, long-suffering wife, the baby Chloe as Zoe. There were things that they could verify in this document, especially the dates, right? October 10th. Things that they could verify in SK confessions that they knew that Mark Twitchell had done. So they had to go through this document line by line to see how much of it they could verify, right? And they were able to verify quite a bit, let's just say. The document ended with him dismembering the victim, who he didn't know from Adam. He did not know at all. There was no reason to kill this person. Police were baffled by what the motive could possibly be for Mark killing an absolute stranger. You know, we'll get into it. And it's said that he thought about dumping the remains in a sewer. He didn't say, but the document ended before they found out what sewer or which area of Edmonton he was talking about, because he was talking about Edmonton. Sorry, guys. So on October 23rd, people online, Johnny's online friends, as well as his in-person friends, started to talk about Johnny being missing and little bits and pieces of things. An old friend of Johnny's from Vancouver posted on Johnny's wall about him being missing. Oddly enough, exactly 1 hour later, Johnny signed into Facebook, added a friend, and then quickly signed back out. So the garage was searched on October 24th. They had to research it again, right? And really deeply search into it at this point in time. This is actually in the neighborhood. This detached garage is in the neighborhood of Greenville, which is a subdivision. Okay, a subdivision. Sorry, guys. In the suburb of Mill Woods, which is a suburb of Edmonton. That's a lot, isn't it? Sorry, guys. But that's ostensibly where the garage is. Like I said, they were both rented by two separate people, and it was like a decrepit property. In fact, there was a lot of renters that had gone to and from it. Most of the rest of the neighborhood was fairly good looking. People, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, making sure the lawns were mowed and flowers and stuff like this. This property, not so much. It was kind of decrepit, kind of overgrown, not that great to look at. So when, of course, they walked in, they were videotaping everything. And it looked fairly clean. The garage did look fairly clean. But on closer examination, here are the things they found with the garage, or in the garage. 2 rolls of duct tape. Okay, so he talked about duct tape in SK Confessions. Blood spots on various objects. And when I say spots, they would be like fine splatters. Ones that weren't necessarily visible to the human eye unless you were looking for them. Black handcuffs that were on the floor. And they actually found the key to the handcuffs in Mark's home office drawers, like his desk drawers. They did find the key. A roll of garbage bags. Now, ostensibly, Mark had already explained this all away as being movie props and the fake blood that they had used to make the movie. However, he did say he'd cleaned it up more than once, too. They found a gas-powered BB gun in a blue case. A stun baton. So if you guys don't know what that is, when we're thinking stun guns, when we're talking about police using things like that, we're thinking a taser, right? Like that little, it almost looks like an electric razor. And when you press the buttons, it goes zzz and zaps to life. This is an actual baton. You can't, it was illegal to buy them in Canada at this point in time. I'm not sure if it still is. It probably is, but I'm not sure if it still is. So what it is it's got its own case, and it's a fairly small cylindrical shaped device, almost like the magic wands or like the old antennas from TVs, guys. You know how you can extend them? So basically all you have to do is go like that and it extends out. And it can deliver a shock of up to 800,000 volts, guys. So this thing is not something to fool around with. They found it there. It wasn't a prop. It was an actual working, ostensibly, stun gun. They found 2 long metal pipes. The end of one was blackened by char. The second one was wrapped in hockey tape to about halfway up. If you guys aren't familiar with hockey tape, I'm sure most of you are, but if you aren't, hockey tape is not electrical tape, guys. It's black and it's almost like fabric. It's almost like fabric band-aids. Ostensibly, it's so that the players can handle the stick easier, especially if they're sweating. So this was wrapped halfway up with hockey tape, but the other end, the end that was exposed, had bits of muscle, bits of, we're talking like very small bits of blood, bone, muscle, cartilage, and human debris, let's just say. It was in the mouth of it, kind of like pushed down a little. They also found a bottle of ammonia that was flecked with blood, a jug of gas, blood splattered scissors, the metal table like I described before that was also stained with blood, a steak knife with possible or probable blood stains on it, a bloody tooth fragment. That was not a prop. It was a real human tooth. Cleaning supplies, various cleaning supplies, guys, which we've already talked about, including gloves, coveralls, so that you don't get sprayed. An empty package for a drop cloth. They also found the address plaque from the garage was just lying in the garage, so it had been removed. And I believe, I don't know if they ever talked to the original owner of the house. I'm going to assume they did. And I think the owner verified that the address had been on it until Mark had taken it over. But don't quote me on that, guys. I'm not quite sure. They also found minute blood droplets, blood spray. Okay, it was definitely blood spray or blood splatter. But it went in various degrees. Some of it was down. Some of it was going up. Some of it was teardrop shaped, so you could tell it was definite cast off. Some of it were actual actual circular splatters, things of that. Some of it was runnier. It was going in various directions, and it was all over the garage doors and the inside of the garage itself, but very minute, guys. It was like a fine spray. You know what I mean? Like, he'd cleaned up a vast deal of it, but he wasn't very good at cleanup, let's just say. They were able to ascertain that whoever was killed there, because, right, they can't say it's Johnny full on. They don't have the DNA yet. Whoever was killed there had to have been struck at least 4 times by some type of incapacitating object. At least 4 times. So they were able to locate Mark. He was at his parents' house at this point in time, and they decided they had to put up 24/7 surveillance of this guy. They had to see what he was doing. Now, he mostly stayed indoors, and that was his deal anyway, guys. He was pretty much an indoor person. He liked to be on the internet indoors. Not that that means anything. He lived a lot of his life online. It doesn't really mean anything, but it appeared like he was hunkering down even more. At one point, his younger sister Susan showed up, and they went out for coffee. Nobody knows what they talked about. The officers were just able to see them go there. And then the 2 of them went back into the house. Susan talked there for at least 15 minutes, or Susan was inside for at least 15 minutes, and then she hurriedly left. Now, the DNA, the objects, I should say, that they had used to test for Johnny's DNA, like his toothbrush and his deodorant, had an insufficient amount of his DNA on them. It's possible they were new, right, guys? So they had to go back into the condo and find things with a larger sample, something like his razor, right, guys? T-shirts that he would have sweat in. Various items like that. Glasses he would have drunk from. They just needed a larger sample. So they were dispatched back to get that. They were not able to arrest Mark at this point in time. This is why they're watching him 24/7. They're not able to arrest him because there is no direct DNA link proving that Johnny was in the garage. They know somebody was there. They know something happened. But there wasn't like a major bloodletting scene at this point that they could tell. Because it had been cleaned somewhat too, and ammonia dilutes everything. If you use ammonia or bleach, it's going to dilute the DNA anyway. But they couldn't arrest him yet. They had to wait for that DNA to come back and confirm that it was missing man Johnny Altinger, right? He's missing at this point. So on October 27th, they went back to the condo and collected more things of Johnny's to get an actual profile. The story also broke in the press on the 27th, but police were very tight-lipped about the details. They just said that a 29-year-old man had been, or they didn't even say that. They just said that there was a missing man, probable foul play. They didn't say anything else at that point in time, but people were starting to read about it in the papers and online. Officers, this is actually kind of funny to me. So they went undercover of sorts, I guess. They were trying to see if it's possible to put up a fake female profile. I mean, they must not have watched Catfish. I don't know. Maybe, was Catfish out by then? I guess it probably wasn't. But yeah, no, I guess they wouldn't know about catfishing at that point in time. Yeah, it was 2008. So they decided to see if it was easy to go online and create a fake profile and see if they could get men interested in this fake profile. So they did that, and of course they were able to, and they used this as a way to verify that it was relatively easy to fake who you were online. Verify more of SK Confessions. The 24-hour surveillance had to be reduced to 20 hours because of the budget. So between the hours of 1 and 5 a.m., they weren't actively able to watch Mark. All they could do was just pray he wasn't doing something he shouldn't have been doing. But the rest of the time, he was under surveillance. Everybody, all the cops are wondering about a possible motive. This guy doesn't even know this guy. Like, Mark does not know Johnny. Johnny's a good guy. He's a nice guy. He doesn't seem to be involved in any criminality. Nobody said anything bad about him other than the fact that, you know, there were friends that described him as a bit of a nerd and a loner and that sometimes he could be reserved. Nothing like that. There's nothing in Johnny's background that would make it seem like he was attached to anybody that Mark knew, so this couldn't be vengeance. The two of them didn't know each other. Why would he kill a complete stranger? But if you look in SK Confessions, the reason why he'd do it is because he just wanted to kill somebody. He wanted to see what it was like, and he wanted to see if he could pull off being a serial killer, guys. He figured because he had watched Dexter and because he'd read some books about psychology and human behavior and forensics, he figured he could outfox the police, that he'd become the best serial killer of all time. He didn't care who Johnny was. He just needed an innocent victim, and Johnny was that person. So who was Mark Twitchell? You guys are probably asking yourself at this point in time. He was actually born July 4th of 1979. His mother's name is Mary. His father's name is Norman. He had a passion for fantasy, for costume making, and for performance from a very early age. In fact, a lot of people said he lived in a fantasy world. He was always envisioning ideas and making plays and things of that nature that kids do when they're younger. He was always envisioning that sort of stuff. He lived in a fantasy world. His mother was a graphic designer, and his father Norman was a maintenance worker for one of the city offices downtown, but they were very supportive of his creative abilities. They fully encouraged him at all points in time. They never said, oh, don't do that. They were fully supportive of him, guys. He says his childhood, Mark himself said his childhood was, quote, a textbook upbringing, end quote. His parents were good. They were encouraged to him. They were encouragement. There was no corporal punishment. They were very supportive of all of his ventures in life. They were just great parents. He had a younger sister named Susan. She was more than likely born in 1983. She seems about 4 years younger. You know, they had fought like teenagers do when they were teenagers, but they ended up becoming very close to each other in their late teens and early 20s. So she was almost like a best friend of his. She was very smart, she was very athletic, and she became an engineer. She was more outgoing. Mark was more introverted to some extent. He didn't like athletics, but he was highly intelligent. He did try to tell somebody, a corrections officer, that he had an IQ of 146, but I don't think it's ever been verified, guys. So, he was socially awkward as a kid. Now, friends remember him being an attention seeker, but not for good things. Not, oh, look, I got a straight A. It was more like being class clown or doing stupid things in class. He was always seeking attention. That was a thing he needed from everybody. So like I said, he had been socially awkward as a kid, and as a child, he had like reddish brown hair. He wore very thick glasses, and his ears stuck out, I guess, quite a bit, is what they said. So he was bullied by a lot of people for his appearance. Now, one good thing Mark had going for him was that he was incredibly witty. He was a very funny, sarcastic guy. And he would use that wit to try to get him out of instances of being bullied or instances of being beaten up. He was able to do so sometimes. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So, like I said, he had a passion for Star Wars. He loved Star Wars. He loved video games. He loved comic books. He loved science fiction. He loved drawing. He was actually a really good artist. I can't lie about that, guys. And dressing in elaborate costumes. That was his big deal. He loved dressing up in these costumes. And his costumes were nothing to sneeze at, guys. His aunt, when he went to high school, was actually the fashion teacher there. And he learned a great deal about making costumes from her. And like I said before, these aren't just crap costumes. Halloween, let's just say, was Mark's favorite time of year. It was his Christmas. Okay, Halloween is my Christmas too. I love Halloween. There are specific reasons I love Halloween. But Halloween was Mark's deal. In 2007, so the year before this crime, he had actually, I guess in Edmonton, Halloween is a big thing. And they've actually changed some of the festivals around it to be Deadmonton due to the unfortunate nickname. But there were several huge costume parties, guys, I guess. They were held at specific places. One was called the Halloween Howler. And these were not just joke costume parties, I guess, guys. They were more or less ones where you won quite a bit of money, guys. Like, you would win quite a deal of money. And it was his dream to win one of these things. And he, in 2007, dressed up as Bumblebee from Transformers. He worked on the costume for months. He dressed up as it. And of course, he won. He won the Halloween Howler. And he also won a costume party that was held that weekend. I shouldn't be calling it a costume party, guys. There's a better word for it. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, it's a costume party. Yeah. Costume contest. There we go. Costume contest. I'm sorry, guys. So he actually won it. And he was able to win prizes of money, a brand new Harley Davidson, which he actually sold. And because of all this, he ended up with $16,000 from winning this. So not a bad chunk of change. He won it with his costumes. So he was actually really good at making costumes. However, with the regards to the rest of school, he didn't join in any activities. He wasn't on student council or involved in any of that stuff. He didn't go for athletics. I guess he liked to play basketball when he was younger, but nothing in school form. He wasn't anybody that would try out for a team. He was essentially an outcast. He did have some friends, but he was essentially an outcast. People said of him, quote, he was happiest when he was playing make-believe, end quote. Eventually, as a teen, he picked up a video camera and he started to film little skits, little comedy skits and stories he'd made up. Well, he claimed to make them up, but he would take pre-existing ideas and tweak them a little bit. kind of sounds like House of Cards and Dexter, right? Tweak them a little bit so that they were more in line with what he wanted. He'd tweak them a little bit to make them seem like ideas of his own. He would then show these videos to his friends and family and gauge their reaction. And everybody seemed to be laughing. Everybody seemed to really like it. So from that point forward, he knew at some point in time he wanted to direct movies. He wanted to be involved in making movies. This is where his love of entertaining, or I shouldn't say his love of entertaining because he always had that, but this is where his love of filmmaking came from, showing these home videos, these homes. It's kind of like what we do on YouTube, right? Filming the skits and putting them up. That was like what he was doing, only with like the old school camcorder. So eventually, in his later teen years, his movies went from being comedy to featuring more violence and more horror. They were progressing that way. He became, now, like I told you guys before, when Mark decides he likes something, he doesn't just like something. He becomes obsessed with it. It takes over every part of his life. He doesn't seem to have much control over it. He needs to be doing it, watching it, looking at it, looking into it, researching for it 24/7. So before it was Star Wars. Before he discovered Dexter, it was Star Wars. He was all Star Wars all the time. That's what he talked about. That's what he read about. That's what he watched. That's what he did. Of course, the same would happen later on with Dexter, but at this point in time, in his early years, it was more Star Wars and things of that nature. It would take all control of him. When inspiration struck him, it was the only thing he focused on. So he was known, though, to tell stories to people that weren't right. He was known as a liar and a storyteller. Not anything devious at that point in time or dangerous. He would just lie about stupid things. Now, when he was younger, he did eventually start stealing money from his mom for junk food, he claimed. But later on, he did upgrade to shoplifting, and he was arrested for it twice. Instead of having a criminal record, though, he did something called the Alternative Measures Program, which basically is for first-time offenders. Young offenders, more or less, but first-time offenders, to show them other ways. So it could be having to take courses on, let's say, anger management, or having to watch videos about why, and write essays, I should say, about why stealing is wrong, research things like that. It could even be like work detail, you know, like having to pick up the trash. But if you do the Alternative Measures Program, you won't have a criminal record. It'll show that you will have gone through alternative measures other than having a criminal record. It's giving a second chance to first-time offenders in the hopes that they won't reoffend. In his 20s, he started to become enamored with the darker characters from his science fiction movies, from watching science fiction movies, not his own, but from watching them. He loved fantasy storylines, so he started posting volumes of materials, volumes of his own writings, on a website called theforce.com. This is exclusive to Edmonton. It's dedicated to hardcore Star Wars fans that are mostly in Edmonton. Apparently, Edmonton has a large fan base for Star Wars. He had multiple accounts, and he was obsessed with Star Wars in it. He would watch the newly made prequels, you know, the ones that had been made up until that point in time anyway. He would watch them obsessively over and over and over again so we can know them line by line. He posted on various websites, various other websites as well, though, too, about Star Wars, and he would usually sympathize with the bad characters. I'm going to air quote it. The bad characters, the more violent characters, like, what is it? Lord Sith? Is that the guy with the craggly red face and like Darth Vader and stuff like that? He sympathized with them rather than Luke Skywalker or Anakin Skywalker or anybody like that. I think Anakin turned bad though, because he was Darth Vader. You guys know what I mean. he wondered why, or he wondered what they felt, and why they felt that way. That was his main wondering about it. He said he loved the cold calculatedness of these characters. So I do want to also point out that apparently in his teens, at some point in time, his best friend said that Mark had a hit list of sorts. It was a list of people that he wanted to get revenge on, and this list contained graphic details of the way that he wanted to torture them to death. He had this. So he went, later on, after he graduated, he went to Edmonton's Northern Alberta Institute for Technology to get a degree in radio and television production. Makes sense. He wants to be a filmmaker. His hair at this point in time was now black. He traded in the glasses for contacts. And he had ear surgery. He had corrective surgery in his teens done on his ears to pin them back so they wouldn't be so prominent. It was at this point in time in university that he met Tracy Higgins for the first time. And he fell head over heels in love with her, guys. I guess as far as he can, or as much as he can love somebody. He said, it was said that the two of them seemed highly incompatible. They didn't share many interests. She wasn't like into Star Wars and stuff like that. He wasn't into dogs and things of that nature. He was tall, she was short. They just didn't seem compatible. But regardless, they had some type of raw animal magnetism, that's what they called it, that drew them together. They dated for about a year. But in that time, Tracy learned how much of a liar he really was. He would lie about stupid things too, like his age or what his parents did or where he was going for dinner. Just really dumb things to lie about. She found that he was an incredible liar. So she dumped him because she couldn't trust him anymore. If he's lying about simple things, what else is he lying about? And he was heartbroken about it. I'm just going to show you guys some pictures now. We're going to use them from the actual book. Just give me 1 second, guys. Before I'm going to show you some of these pictures later on. But here he is. There's Mark Twitchell himself. God, it's a creepy picture. There he is when he was a kid, all those various stages. And there's he and Jess when they got married, as well as the bumblebee outfit. And these two pictures, that's Johnny right there, guys. Both of those pictures. So they broke up. Now in 2001, he met an American girl online, and I think it was on plentyoffish.com, and her name was Megan Castorella. They eventually married in Edmonton, and they stayed there for a little while, but the marriage was a disaster, guys. Mark continuously cheated on her. He spent most of his time online. It was almost like he was interested in the marriage until they got married, and then, no, wasn't good enough. So eventually they decided to relocate. I think she left to go back to the States, but he wanted to give the marriage another try. So he ended up moving to the States, and he got a job in sales. And of course, Mark was very good in sales, guys. At this point in time, he was no longer that awkward kid. He was confident. He was charismatic. Oh, we've heard this before. He was oozing self-confidence, and he could sell anything to anybody. So he was able to get sales jobs down in the States. And the two of them were married for about 4 years. They lived in Iowa and Illinois, but the marriage deteriorated. And by the summer of 2005, Mark was headed back to Edmonton, and he wanted to bring his dreams of being a filmmaker to light. He decided that now was the time where he could follow his passion and be a filmmaker. He married for the second time. Oh, of course, this would be the fan film. He made a Star Wars fan film. That's what his major claim to fame was originally, was a Star Wars fan film. Because Edmonton had such a strong Star Wars base, he felt he would be able to make it better there. So he married for the second time in 2007. He met Jess, I believe I said it previously, on plentyoffish.com. I want you to remember plentyoffish.com. He met her, and within 4 months, she was pregnant. Now, who's Johnny Altinger? Johnny was born April 28th of 1970 in Edmonton. He has an older brother named Gary. So technically speaking, he and Mark are a lot alike. He has an older sister, or Mark had a younger sister. He had an older brother named Gary. And it was actually Gary that named him Johnny. He told Alfredi one year, which is his mother's name, that he wanted a Johnny baby. That's why Johnny's name is Johnny, not John. That's what they called him. He was an easygoing baby. He may not have been exceptionally handsome or conventionally handsome, but he was a caring, quiet, and trusting man. He was tall. He was thin. He had dark hair. Eventually, when he got older, he started having like a receding hairline, so he shaved his head bald. He was bullied like Mark was as a kid, but unlike Mark, he didn't seem to care. He didn't care what other people thought about him. He had natural confidence and he liked himself, so it didn't bother him to the extent that it bothered Mark. As a teen, his family moved to White Rock, BC, which is just outside of Vancouver, and they stayed there for a while. That's why he had a friend base in Vancouver. His dad worked as an auto upholsterer, and all of the men in the Altinger family loved anything mechanical. They loved cars, they loved bikes, they loved engines, anything like that. Specifically German-made engines like Volkswagens. You guys know I love Volkswagen. He specifically had an affinity for German-made vehicles. He also had a key. He would buy older model cars like Audis and VWs. And even though they weren't necessarily in the greatest running shape, he always well maintained them. He made sure they were clean. He made sure they were detailed. He took very good care of his vehicles. He loved the internet. He grew up in the internet era, right? And he loved the internet. He loved the fact that he could connect online, so much like Mark, that he could connect online. He loved to play games online, like video games online, with other players, multiplayer games, and connect with people in that area. His dad died. I think it was when he was a bit older, guys, but I can't quite pinpoint. I couldn't pinpoint his dad's name either. But his dad died, and his mom was very distraught. And being that he was a good son, he actually moved back in with his mom for about 3 years to help her get used to living without a husband, but also to help her do all the various things that she wouldn't have been able to do. A shoulder to cry on, someone to give support and lend support. Gary did as well, but Gary had a family. He was married and he had children. Johnny had a relationship. He had a relationship with a woman. They had a relationship for quite some time. And before he left living at his mother's house, he was going to propose to this woman. But they had a serious conversation, he and this woman. I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. And this woman desperately wanted to start a family. Johnny did not. Johnny did not want kids at that point in time. In fact, he really didn't want kids ever. So he couldn't start a family with somebody who wanted something that he didn't, and it wouldn't be fair to her either. So they parted ways. He had the engagement ring bought and everything, but they parted ways. I don't think it was a acrimonious parting, though. I think they stayed somewhat friendly, but he was now newly single and thrust into the dating scene. He never thought he'd be newly single in his late 30s, but he was thrust into the dating scene. Eventually, like I said, he lived with his mother for 3 years, but eventually she was well enough to take care of herself. She had gotten used to things enough to take care of herself. She met her partner, Dennis, and at this point in time, Johnny decided to move back to Edmonton. He worked at a pharmacy warehouse for a while, but what he really wanted to do was become a helicopter pilot. Eventually, he learned that it would be far too expensive. It takes a lot of money to be a helicopter pilot, and he just couldn't afford to do so. So he decided to go back to school, and this would be to actually Mark's alma mater, which is the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. Sorry, guys. And he took courses there, and he graduated and landed the job in quality control at Argus Machine, and it was a good job. A good fit for him too. He would often talk to his new friends about online dating though. Newly single, he decided that this was the best course of action, and he made himself a profile for websites, particularly plentyoffish.com. Now, if we go back a little bit in time to 2007, this is when Mark was introduced to Dexter, guys. And he was hesitant to watch it at first, but one of his friends pressured him so much that he did watch it, and he was completely and fully absorbed in it. He loved Dexter. He loved everything about Dexter. It was almost like he wanted to be Dexter, let's just say. So before, his focus had been on Star Wars. Now his focus is completely on Dexter. He read all the books. He didn't like the books as much as he liked the movies. As he liked the TV show. He felt that the TV show dealt better with the character than the books did, I guess. Things of that nature. Now, he had been working on this Star Wars fan film from 06 to 07. And he made friends with the crew members that he was able to get. He advertised on a number of different websites in Edmonton, Star Wars fan sites in Edmonton. And he was able to cull a crew from there, as well as actors from there, to be in this movie, which was Star Wars Secrets of the Rebellion. That's what the movie was called. He even got, sorry guys, I'm not very good with this guy's name, Jeremy Bulloch, to make a cameo in the Star Wars fan film. And he was the guy that played the original Boba Fett in the Star Wars movies. So he dreamed of being a Hollywood producer. He felt he was a triple threat, actually, a director, a producer, and a writer. He called his new company that he had formed in 2007, 2007, Express Entertainment, like we said, and he thought of himself as a young George Lucas. While he was filming the fan film that he came up with the premise for Day Players, and he figured Day Players would be his ticket to Hollywood. He was interviewed by numerous Canadian TV outlets while he was making the movie, the fan movie, including CBC, CTV, you know it, and Global. He was interviewed by them because he had put it out there. There was so much buzz generated by it from the Star Wars community that he talked about it. And of course, he made sure to mention in at least one of the interviews that he would be very busy because he was working on this screenplay for Day Players, which would, get him into Hollywood. So he's an aspiring filmmaker at this point in time. In January of 2008, Chloe was born. And although he acted as a requisite father, he talked about it to himself. The fact that he, in reality, had no feelings toward either Jess or the baby. He knew what he was supposed to be feeling. So like a psychopath, he knew what he was supposed to be feeling, but he didn't actually feel it. So he was acting the part of doting husband and father at this point in time. He knew he was. He wrote about it, guys. He writes about lots of things. He wrote a lot of the times. And of course, most of his time at this point in time, when he wasn't, working on Day Players or working on trying to get investors, was spent watching and reading things about Dexter and looking into Dexter. In May and April of 2008, I should say April and May of 2008, Mark Twitchell presented to a bunch of wealthy investors his idea about Day Players. He appeared polished and suave. It was a great presentation. People were actually interested in it. And these are really wealthy investors, guys. A couple of them signed up and agreed to look further into it. So he's really excited. He's like, you know, the more investors I have, you guys will then have a share of the company. And when this thing starts turning profits, all of your investments will be given back to you tenfold, things of that nature. But people were actually excited in his ideas, and a number of them signed on to look further into it. At this point in time, this was really good for him because he had just lost his sales job, working as a guy who sold outsourced IT systems to corporate clients. That was his job. So he had to take on a job selling home security units instead to provide for his family. He wrangled his friends and family into investing in Express Entertainment. And we're not talking little bits of money, guys. It was like, I think 30,000, between 30 and 35,000 from the people that he approached that would do it, specifically a friend and his brother-in-law, so that he could get day players off the ground. Like I said, people really did believe in him. He really was good at what he did, so people did believe in him, and they thought he really could make it. So he felt the Star Wars fan film had worked out well, had turned into a really good movie. It wasn't released. Spoiler alert, guys, it was never released. None of these were. I've seen little bits and pieces about it in Dateline and 48 Hours and Fifth Estate, but it was never released. He decided at this point in time to quit his job so that he could focus on getting more investors for day players, so he could get it off the ground. More investors in Express Entertainment. However, when he talked about it with Jess, she was like, that's not really a good idea, Mark. I'm only on maternity leave. We have a new baby. We won't have enough money to pay for our bills. So he decided he was going to do things a little shiftily, let's just say. He pretended to agree with Jess, but instead, in reality, he quit his job and started faking everything. He pretended to go to work every day. He would leave at the same point in time every day, dressed appropriately, and come back at around the same time every night, just like he had done so before. And he pretended to work. Jess never knew that he wasn't doing it, but in reality, he was driving around, going to various coffee shops and fast food places, and working on finding investors. Just a minute, honey. Working on finding investors, things of that nature. That's what he was doing. He then would use the money that investors had invested in him as a way to pay the bills. He figured he could put that money back later on. So like a Ponzi scheme, right? He figured he'd put it back later on. He went so far as to fake receipts, bank receipts, to hide it from his wife. So he would then boast online all the time about how he'd produced this fabulous, a fabulous film. Just a second. I'm almost done. Okay, you gotta go, honey. Okay, bye, honey. Sorry, guys. It's when you saw the little hand of my youngest. Sorry. It's a lot. Oh God, now I hear Lola scratching. So he had people convinced that top Hollywood stars like Alec Baldwin and it's Lola, like Alec Baldwin and Jeff Goldblum and Kevin Smith were signed on to be attached to this film. He convinced people of that. That was another thing he used to urge his investors to get involved. So Johnny at this point in time was dating. He was online dating. He met a few people. Eventually he met a girl he really liked. She really liked him, but she decided they were better off as friends. He would try to get her to date him from time to time, and eventually she cut off contact because she really didn't want to date him. They still remained friendly, but she wasn't into him that way. So he also became really immersed in New Age spiritualism at this point in time. He was always a spiritual person, but he became immersed in New Age philosophies at this point in time too. So Mark was spending his days at this point in time just messing around on his computer. He would also go to his parents and, of course, hi girl, obsessively read about Dexter and watch the show. By July, investors were not as forthcoming with their money. They weren't as interested as they had been. So he's getting frustrated and he's getting angry. He and Jess are fighting all the time. And specifically, they were fighting about the fact that Jess wanted to move out of the townhouse they were living in. She was ready to have a family home. So instead of finally trying to come clean and saying, oh my God, you know, I lost my job or I don't have a job, he decided to give in to her, and he figured he'd just use the investment money so that he'd be able to get a mortgage. Of course, at this point in time, he has no job, so he can't get a mortgage. Jess is on maternity leave. She can't get a mortgage on her own. So what did he do but go out and buy another cell phone? That way, when the mortgage broker called him on this second cell phone, he would disguise his voice and pretend to be his own boss and give him a glowing recommendation and say that he definitely worked at whatever company he was fake working at. And once again, he faked bank receipts so that Jess never knew that he was using investor money. She thought he had a job and a paycheck. Yeah. Great big scheme. This was a great big scheme that snowballed. But of course, like I said, the two of them had been fighting, and Jess often talked about wanting to leave him. They bought the new house in St. Albert. That was the house they bought in the bedroom community, and they moved in August 1st. Jess, at this point in time, finally found out about her husband's Dexter obsession, how deep it went. And she noticed that Mark seemed distant and that a wall was forming between them. His office basement became his central living area. They didn't interact that much. They were living two separate lives. He didn't really have anything to do with... I mean, he somewhat played with Chloe, but not really. He didn't really have a lot to do with that. He also, at this point in time, started sharing his love of Dexter online, much like he had done with Star Wars before. And, which, by the way, he still hadn't finished any of the production from that film, but regardless. He decided, to make, like, fan websites with other like-minded Dexter lovers at this point in time too, and they would just talk about the various Dexter things. They were more than happy. It was almost like LARPing, guys. It was online. It was almost like online role-playing, where they would become that person and talk about it. He changed his Facebook status to, quote, Mark has way too much in common with Dexter Morgan, end quote. And it was at this point in time, which would be late August, early September, that he decided he was going to film House of Cards. He knew it was going to be a short film. He wanted to make it a thriller. Then he'd have a third movie under his belt, even though Day Players hadn't even taken off yet. And even though he hadn't even finished working on the Star Wars film, he decided he was going to film House of Cards. He knew he had to make it on the cheap because he was running low on funds. So he rented the double door garage to film House of Cards. It was only $175 a month. And he also did it because he knew that the people that lived in the house wouldn't bother with him very much. He emailed his trusty crew to help him, and filming was slated to begin September 26th and end the 27th. And that's where we're going to leave it today, guys. What do you think so far? What is Mark Twitchell? I think you guys know what he is, but what do you guys think so far? What do you guys think happened to Johnny? Do you think SK Confessions was a real account of it? What about this first victim? Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. I hope to see you back next week for part 2 of this. I know I've gone into an incredible amount of detail and I've talked for a long, long time. So hopefully I will see you guys next week. And I hope that you guys have a good week. Bye for now.